Mama, I got bad news, bad news. I've been rolling with some bad dudes, bad dudes. I've been trying to get a bag too,
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Ashes to Awesome podcast, Rising in Recovery. Our podcast provides light, hope, and understanding about addiction and mental health to those living within that life and the people who love them. This episode is brought to you by Together We Can, where Canada recovers from addiction. That's twcrecoverylife.org. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another edition of the Kaleidoscope Wednesday on the Ashes to Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Chocolate Flange, and today in virtual studio, of course, I am sitting with Ryan Bathgate. How you doing today, Ryan?
Doing good today. We've got, as you know, we've got some exciting stuff happening around here that I, based on my association to the organization, can't speak too much about. But I'm sure that you will. But yeah, no, we got a lot of cool things going on, and I think I want to take a second and just express some extreme gratitude for your dedication and devotion to helping the people that I personally serve. It's what we're doing is it's pretty cool, and I'm always about let's look at the system and see where the holes are, and this is a really good way to look at that and bring some awareness to all levels of our social tapestry.
Well, I'll speak to that real quick, Ryan. It's an easy thing to get behind. The thanks really aren't needed. It's having experienced homelessness myself. And it's a rough go out there, man. It's a really rough go. So I'm more than happy to do it. And to the listeners, I guess by the time this airs, you may or may not have seen some of it. We'll see how it all goes. But what we're doing is there's a 24-hour homeless event happening in Mission, BC. And we are, what the show is doing is covering this event where they've got 10-ish, whatever the amount is, volunteers that have come in to live like somebody who is unhoused. And do it for 24 hours without the benefit of keys and cards and cash and phones and all the things. And just to get to experience how tough that can be out there and, trying to get some basic things done in life. So what we're going to do is interview those people before and after for a quick little 5-minute interview and kind of get their takeaways from it. I'm really excited to do it this afternoon. I've been looking forward to it now for a couple months, and let's go, right? So,
without saying too much, I'm fortunate to be part of an organization that has an extremely innovative and creative leader that has a deep understanding of all levels of the social tapestry. And so it's a good spot for me personally because of my, that injustice bone that I have to constantly be, picking, scratching. It's an itch. Yeah, it's an itch.
Yeah.
And so, so like I said, there's a lot of cool things happening, and then I think today we're gonna get into we talked last week a lot about loneliness, and the reason is
because we should probably introduce what we're doing here. I never did do that, so right? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll tell you what. I'm gonna shut up for a second.
Okay. Let me introduce what today's all about, and then we'll get to it. And I'll do my job, then you could do your job, and then we can do our job. How's that sound? Right?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
All right. So this is our second part in a 3-part series about connection, and this one we're going to call Paradigm Shift. So take it away from there. That's all you had to do is wait for that, man. Come on. Right?
Okay. Well, you know me. I'm really good at boundaries for me, just not everyone else. So the reason I say paradigm shift is because it becomes an opportunity for us. And so I talked about what implies, what implies another thing. In order for something to exist, the contrast has to be present for it to have sustainability, if that makes any sense. We don't, like a fish doesn't know that it lives in water until it jumps out of water and experiences what it's like to be outside of water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so at that point, the fish knows the difference between wet and dry.
Yeah.
So we talked about loneliness because loneliness, I think, is such I think it's something that impacts all of us at some point in our life, and it changes the way we are and the way we see the world. And I think that is a really crucial part of this process because we have to understand what the other side is in order to appreciate, the yin or the yang, if that makes any sense to you. Okay, so
yeah, it does. Yep.
And so I think we left off exploring, what loneliness was, how we experience it, what it feels like, and the best thing that I can do is describe it as being lost in a cave, without any direction, and there's no light, and there's almost a sense of hopelessness that exists within that state. Um, and so I guess like I don't like to spend a lot of my time in deficit thinking, but it is important to explore the deficit in order to understand the asset. If that
Okay.
makes sense to you. Okay.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, I just put myself in that space, and and when I'm in a state of loneliness, what am I really yearning for? Uh we have all these coping strategies that we've developed throughout both history and our social tapestry that are really not conducive to the human spirit and how the human spirit can thrive or flourish. And I talk about, when I say the word flourish, I always think about organics. I think about, that thing we talked about like the nutrients being required, the the rain, the sun, and then the tension that's created from a storm, and how that creates a stronger organism.
Yeah.
And so, we like, I don't know if you've ever been on Bender before or anything like that, and you come out of that and you wake up, and the first thing that we open our eyes to is the cold, hard reality of the loneliness that exists within that moment.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
that every time is an opportunity. Unfortunately, most of us, we get rid of that feeling as soon as possible, which is snort, sniff, drink, shoot,
Yeah.
swallow, whatever, ingest. And that's the easy way for us. I mean, people that have experienced characteristics of addiction, it's very in our face what the problem is, or sorry, what our solution to that problem is. And there are
Yes.
many resources like this network to be able to help with that. The I think that where it becomes difficult is that I think we got seven. Now I read something that there's 7.8 billion people in the world now. So maybe I'm on some old stats, but
That seems
I
like
think,
a lot, right?
yeah. But I just read that yesterday, and I'm like, oh boy, I guess I better shift my data.
Well, we're
Um,
old. We're old. We can
yeah,
get away with saying old things, right? Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Like, do you call a quarter 2 bits? that's that's old. Yeah. So, I guess what I'm saying here is like every time that happens, every time we experience the depths of loneliness, there is opportunity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how often? I mean, it almost takes a extreme number of times to be in that space before we start to crawl out. And I mean like trudgingly crawl out, and we don't know where we're going. The reason it's scary is like because we don't know what's going to happen. Fear is a lack of information. So um, when I think about that space, I got options. I can either get more of whatever I've been using to cope, whether it be money, donuts, sex, alcohol, drugs, which to me are the same, or whatever that might be, or the other option. And what that option is where we start to begin the process of healing and really flourishing as a human being. And it's really simple. We pick up the phone, we reach out, and that moment, it requires such an incredible amount of courage, and courage is just it is I think it is the number one thing that we need to be practicing on a daily basis in order to access the things that we want to achieve in life, which are predominantly embedded in joy and happiness and understanding and peace and all of these beautiful things, creativity, which is that shift to the right side of the brain. So how do we take loneliness and turn that into something fruitful? How do we make it a strength? How do we go from deficit to asset in something that is like, I've said this so many times in the show, that, a life hack is to try and find value where value is undetectable. So how do we find value in loneliness when it's seemingly impossible and undetectable?
How?
Okay.
Yeah.
How? Yeah. And
Yeah.
how? I mean, the answer is pretty simple.
Mhm.
We access what's called a phasic strength, which means phasic means it is flexible. It goes up and down.
Okay.
So when we look at a list of strengths, and there's 24 common strengths as per the Values in Action survey called VIA. It's a VIA strength survey.
Okay.
And they did this. We use this in organizational culture development. And so VIA is a tool, I guess you'd say, that we use to do an assessment on our own personal strengths as a human being. So they did this study over a number of years with 50 of the top researchers in the world, and went through all cultures and through all countries, and they pulled out 24 strengths that every single human being embodies. You do that. Your mic's off. I can't hear you.
I'm looking at this list right now. Actually, I just pulled it up here.
So there's proof. I'm not making it up. Huh?
Let's not start qualifying it like that every time. Jeez. Right.
Yeah. So like for me, my top strength is I've done the survey many times, and usually bravery is number one. A love of learning, curiosity, creativity, leadership, and so when we think about those strengths, like some of those strengths will be in the middle, 15, 16, but let's just say bravery is one.
Okay.
And when bravery goes from 15 to 1 for an instance, that's called a phasic movement.
Okay, that all makes sense. Okay,
right.
Ties together.
So,
nice. Yep. Okay.
So at any time we can access these strengths, but it's about, again, understanding our consciousness, understanding our ability to access awareness, and expanding our horizon of understanding to include things that are happening outside of our awareness so they don't impact us in a negative way. Alan Watts, I know I say this about probably every other show. Everyday ordinary consciousness leaves out more than it takes in.
I don't think you've ever said that exact word.
No, really?
Exact quote in the show. No.
My God,
I hate to challenge you, man, but that was a bold statement every second show, and I'm like, I've never heard that before. So,
Well, what do I know?
You meant to. You think it every show.
I do, and because it's such a part of my regular thought process. Now, if you understand what that means, okay, everyday ordinary consciousness.
Yep. Okay.
It takes in more, or leaves out more than it takes in. In other words, there's so much happening outside of our awareness, beyond our horizon of understanding, that impacts the way that we operate in our day-to-day life world. Okay. And this is why all these things that happen, like understanding how trauma is affected to, let's say I'm somebody who's deeply traumatized. One day I wake up, I run across somebody, I meet them, and then I just decide to go home, pack my bags, and leave and live a whole life of drug addiction and just leave my whole life behind. Now, and how does trauma impact that? So that is happening outside of awareness. That trauma happens where I don't believe, based on my traumatic experience, that and the reinforcement of shame, that I have the ability to deserve the life that I am currently living. So I forfeit it, and thinking that I'm chasing this exciting experience of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know what I mean? But really, what's happening is it's a outside of my awareness. I have a belief that I don't deserve to have a good life because I didn't say, I don't know, maybe I was sexually abused and I didn't stand up for myself. So I will never give myself any credit I don't deserve. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so when we start to expand our horizon of understanding, those things that are impacting us outside of awareness become into awareness and give us access to control of that. So now we have, when we have an understanding of it, we know how to use it. It's part of our being. It's not in the outside doing, what do you call the puppeteer thing,
marionette,
marionette,
pulling the strings, whatever.
Pulling the strings, exactly. And so when the outside of awareness events start controlling our lives, which they do for pretty much all of us, until we keep expanding that horizon of understanding, we will never really be able to get out of the grips of what the impact of those events are.
Okay.
And so, like, I've heard so many times, like, yeah, I don't understand how, my trauma has got me to this place I am today. And then we'll have a conversation where I kind of open up the awareness, start, and then you can see the light bulb going on, like, boop, 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 all these dots. And like, oh my God, I can totally see how
Yeah.
that has affected me 30 years
Yeah.
later. And so, and so now we have this great opportunity. Now we understand loneliness. We understand what it is, like, in as part of our being. And when it becomes, embodied within our awareness, we now can access that as part of who we are, which means it's not all of who we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what we don't attend to, or what we don't, whatever we don't, there's a saying to this, whatever we don't control controls us.
All right.
Okay, so if I have a history of trauma and I don't attend to that, I don't have it inside of awareness, it is doing an immense amount of damage, and it's really doing its job because it's trying to keep us safe, and it thinks keeping us safe is to keep us isolated, and to keep us isolated is actually against the entire makeup of what we are as human beings. We are connectable beings. That is our whole access to meaning and purpose, is to be connectable. So how do we become connectable from loneliness?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is really, like, talk therapy is really good with that. But I mean, it's just like the access to vulnerability. So if we think about loneliness and how loneliness and shame work together so well, because shame needs secrets to thrive.
Okay.
And loneliness is a darkness that also feeds shame to be able to be so strong.
Yeah.
And as
Yeah.
long as I feel like I'm not enough, I will never be beyond I'm not enough. And that makes me think of, like, Mandela, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. Like, those people all believed they had the power to change the world, and they did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they were in that space of shame, they would have never got to where they got to, because they would have never believed they had the power to do that. Now, so when I look at that for myself, I'm like, whether or not I do change the world, which, in reality is I probably won't. But as long as I believe I can, then I have the power to do so.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And so now I know loneliness. And I think about this as, like, one thing I know how to do in this world is I know how to be poor. I've had a lot of practice.
I got that aced.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but by knowing how to be poor has informed me on how to be responsible, accessing a freedom when it comes to economics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I look at, like, I grew up in a pretty posh place in Comox, and, like, some of the people there never understood what it is to be poor. And as life went on, they the silver spoon kind of lost its luster, and then they experienced it. They experienced poorness and had no idea what to do with that. You know what I mean? So it always finds a way to balance itself out. So now what are my opportunities here? Well, now I know that I don't enjoy the experience of loneliness. It feels like it's against the human spirit itself. And so what do we need to feel human? We need connection. And connection is the answer. Connection is the conduit that love travels through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
absolutely. Yeah.
So let's look at the anatomy of connection. How do I turn that? So what do I have to do? I have to start practicing the art of living. I have to practice. In other words, there are no expectations of being perfect. There are no expectations of being, amazing at whatever I'm doing. I'm just practicing. Like, when I was learning how to do a snapshot, I sat in the backyard and I did snapshots over and over and over again until I finally broke all the stucco off the wall and got shit by my dad. But like, over, you know what I mean? And, like, same as, like, throwing a curveball. You need to learn how to do it and practice doing it. And so, and when we talk about the art of living, we get one life to live, and there are no rules. The rules that we have in life are rules that are probably imposed by us, by the social tapestry, or shame laden. And so I never look at it. I just, like, it's, instead of a rule, I call it a boundary. I call it a technology. I call it, it's something that helps me become more than who I already am. And so the only rule that we really have is to enjoy the gift of life that we've been given.
Yeah.
If we are practicing the art of living, then we are practicing the self-expression of life itself.
Yeah.
Okay, and art has no art is hermeneutic. It has no sorry, I'll define that word. Hermeneutics is
Yeah.
a fancy word for interpretation of
Yep.
cha-ching.
Mhm.
You know, so how do we interpret the expression of life so how do we what do we do? How do we practice that? So Chuck, you're it's something you're naturally good at is expressing your vulnerabilities, and I think that when we have the courage to put our emotions out on the table with
Yep.
because that's a scary place to be. Like to be honest, like I'm gonna
Yeah.
put my true feelings out, and what you do with them is not in my control. That's
Yeah.
scary,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so but that's how we create the medium.
Yeah.
So connection requires authenticity. Authenticity requires honesty and transparency. And here I'll just asterisks. Don't try and be authentic. It's never going to work.
You
You
either are or
know,
you're not, right? Yeah.
well, no,
No,
but
yeah, yeah.
there isn't an anatomy to authenticity. Like
Yep.
if you're focusing on being transparent, being honest, being integral, and standing up for what you believe in, the byproduct of that will be authenticity. You know what I
100. Yep.
mean?
Yep. Yep.
So when it comes to like us entering into the realm of like transcending into a connectable being, we have to. I mean, there's going to be fear, so we need courage. We're going to have to find a support network or a support group or even a support person that we get to practice this on, where we're not going to feel judged, we're not going to feel pushed out, we're not going to feel rejected, and we're not going to feel less than.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would go back to the tenets again. Find somebody that you feel heard, seen, loved, and can be lovable with.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And then we just practice these things, and as we do that externally, there's a shift that happens intrinsically that starts to create and evolve a level of intrinsic resource based in self-worth, self-respect, and self-esteem that starts to grow and grow and grow. So the more that I become connectable, the more I become complete as a human being, as a what we were designed to be, which
Yeah.
is connectable. And so I guess like we want to archive the loneliness feeling. We want to put it in the library. We want to be able to go and leave our bag at the door of emotion and go and look up that chapter of our life about what loneliness looked like, how we experienced it, and what it means to us. And I say cherish our experience of loneliness,
Yep.
because like I said in part one, loneliness changes us. Loneliness can take away our childhood. It can take away our dreams. It can take away our hopes, our ambition, our access to potential, and most of all, our access to capacity. Because all of a sudden this glass ceiling drops when we're in a state of loneliness, and our intrinsic resources are low, and we don't feel like we have the ability to be more than what we are, which is stuck in a hole or stuck in a cave.
Yep.
And so what do we need? Like I need Chuck, I need you to throw me a ladder down to this hole, and I
Yep.
don't want you to get me out. I
Yep.
want you to come down there with me first.
Oh, there's that story, right? That story
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the addict in the hole. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
so I think of the Brene Brown sympathy empathy versus empathy video, which is pretty funny. It's a short little clip
Yep.
on YouTube.
Yep.
And like so empathy is going down in the hole with a person. So that's what we require. We require empathy. We require somebody that we can be connectable with, that can take our
Mhm.
vulnerability with understanding and empathy and use it as a way to reflect back to us our actual true worth. Because in here, in our mind, I mean, it's like our mind can be a monster. It can tell us things that are absolutely ridiculous that we'll actually believe until they're externalized.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and we get this feedback that says, hey, you know what? Actually, you're like the strengths does is you're resilient, you're brave, you're intelligent, you're resourceful, and like so. If I'm talking about like even like let's go to the extreme. Someone's been living on the street for 10 years. They're going to embody those things
Yeah. Yeah.
as survivors.
Hey guys, it's time for a quick public service announcement. But before we do that, I just wanted to mention that it is International Overdose Awareness Day on August 31st, and it's a time to really think about some of the people that we've lost. We've done a ton of episodes here. I'm not even sure what the count is. Close to 20 now, Memorial Mondays, where we celebrate the lives of the people that we've lost, and quite frankly, I'm tired of doing them. So pay attention here. Carry some Narcan, please. Anyway, today's public service announcement is brought to you by
Yachter Treatment Centers in Phuket, Thailand. They are a clinic run by clinicians, not a business run by businessmen. And they know that where addiction is the smoke, trauma is the fire. Learn more at yachtercenters.com. That's YATRACENTRE.com.
Hi everybody, this is Carl with today's public service announcement about naloxone, or, as it's more commonly known, Narcan, a medication that can help save the life of somebody experiencing an opioid overdose. Did you know that in 2021 opioids were responsible for over 7,000 deaths in Canada and 106,000 deaths in the United States? These numbers are staggering, but there is hope. Narcan is a medication that can reverse the effects of an opioid overdose and help save a life. Narcan is available for free at participating pharmacies and harm reduction centers across Canada and is also available without a prescription at most pharmacies in the United States. Now, I know most of you won't be around people using opioids, but you never know when it will be around you, and you could save the life of someone who is loved and who loves.
And so now we take that, and now I have a foundation of this being that I am, that is rooted in values, and that gives me access to have the courage, whether phasic or not, to be able to open myself up to the vulnerability of connection. And because, I mean, let's be frank, you cannot have connection without vulnerability. Not authentic connection. It's not going to happen.
It makes sense.
And you cannot have vulnerability without courage. And so that's why we start with that idea. Have the courage to think big. Have the courage to believe you can be more than what you are. And I'm not saying think that. I'm saying have the courage to start to practice to believe that. What if I could go and get my master's degree? What if I could be a father and raise a family? What if I could even just get that job that I've always wanted, or go back to school, or whatever it is? You know, and I always say, so like, we take that idea and we start processing with people through connectability, and it flourishes into something bigger than that. And as we move along, it's like the stars align, and all, you know, it just kind of comes together. If we look at what happened here, Chuck, you talked to your mom about doing something. Your mom said, "Why don't you do a podcast?" Boom, courage.
Yeah.
For you to do that, take that first step to go. An immense amount of courage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And what came along with it? Doubt.
Oh. Yep.
Insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of failure.
Oh yeah.
And like, think about that when I say fear of failure, what are you left with if this doesn't work? You know, and that is the answer doesn't matter, but the feeling of that really does.
Definitely
you know?
does.
Yeah, like,
today,
you know,
right? You know, still, right? You know,
well,
at some level, right? So, right? Yeah.
And I think, like, you know, like for me, like I'm pretty good academically. I'm pretty good. I've always been pretty good at school and things like that. But from the age of 20, I think is the last day I went to a class in college, to 34, I was so afraid to return back to academics because I had nothing except for my intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And if I went to school and failed, then I wouldn't even have that.
Yeah.
Then who am I? You know, and talk about loneliness. That is a lonely state to be in. So I stayed away from it, and I did jobs that I hated until I finally had the courage to go and just, you know, I made a phone call. And all of a sudden, it just took off. Like, it was just like the universe was waiting for me to make that phone call for 14 years.
Yeah.
You know, and so this is how we transition out of this idea that loneliness is a perpetual state that will never change, because that's not a reality. But it takes action in order to create opportunity. We have to have the courage to make the action, to make the thing happen, so we can start momentum in that direction. And typically, like, it doesn't always work out the way we planned.
Yep. Yep.
To be honest with you, like my plan wasn't to be doing this. My plan wasn't even to be a counselor.
Yeah.
It just happened that way. That it's almost like the universe needed that from me, or for the people I was going to cross. And like you think about, like, to be very transparent, like, I've had depression, I've had suicide attempts, and thank God that's something I'm not good at, because like I would have never met all these amazing people. I
Yeah.
would have never
Right.
experienced a big, like, that's what loneliness did, is it took me to that place where that was an option. So that's the power of it. And the other side of that, what I've learned from it, has molded me into this individual that just wants nothing more than connection. And I told you that story about success, and it meant with the
Father's version and your version.
yeah, you remember that, right? Yeah. And so that is a really good example of, like, understanding both experience and knowledge to create wisdom, to be able to make a decision based on who I want to be in the world, and the courage to start walking in that path through a momentum and trajectory. And all I did, I picked the phone up. That was the momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And 12 years later, I'm here talking to you about it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
No kidding. Yeah.
so like it's a really, and the reason I said, I'm quoting this as a paradigm shift, because this process is a process that can change the rest of our lives. It can change the way that we see ourselves in the world. It can change the way that we see and feel every single day of our life.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the better, where I can now I know through this practice that I can shift my lens at any given time, and it alters the reality and the way that my emotions attach to that reality, and I can be in a place of peaceful contentment, which is my ultimate goal. I'm not always in that space, but I know
Yeah.
what it is. I experience it.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and
You're
there's
capable of getting to it when you need to, right? So,
and I've had enough practice to know that, like,
Yeah.
it's within me. It's not a destination that I
Mhm.
need to go to. It's a place that I need to uncover within myself.
Absolutely.
And
I think. Go ahead. No, sorry. Continue.
no,
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I think that's about the perfect spot to actually kind of wrap up part 2 of the connection series, right? Where we've gotten into the paradigm shift now, and right.
Yeah, and so like,
Yeah.
I just want to keep, like, and we'll do a tie up here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's be collective in this process. If you find yourself in a state of loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
reach out to somebody that has earned the right to hear your story, and
Yep.
tell that person about your loneliness, and see how the magic of words shifts the way that we see the world. And if you're listening to this podcast, take some of those ideas of practicing vulnerability, and practicing self-worth, practicing self-care, and like, one of the easiest things we can do to make this loneliness start to dissipate is make connections with people, make connections with ourselves through, like, like I used to go hit a bucket of balls. I like to go to the gym. I like to go play baseball with my friends. Like, all of those things are things that mitigate me from that cave of loneliness, and they start to open me up to the potential of what connection is. And if we get into that place, then we can see, as those horizons of understanding start to move further and further out, bringing more into our awareness, we can see that our potential is completely unlimited, and our ability we can do anything we want in this lifetime. It's just a matter of hard work, and time.
Absolutely.
I don't think I'm going to be power forward for the Raptors. That maybe,
Probably.
yeah, within reason. But
Yeah.
I could be a doctor. Like, if that's something that I really wanted to do and had the time, I could find a way to make that happen. Or like, and who knows? Maybe I'll get my PhD one day. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do any more school. But
You got another 10 years in you.
yeah, I know. And it is. When I finished my master's, I was like, that's it. I can't wait to read it. And then I read The Old Man and the Sea, the first book I read after I finished school, just to read a book that I wanted to read. Which Hemingway, love Hemingway. Anyway, so if you have questions, if you have if anything about this podcast in our part 2 or part 1 has driven you or brought ideas or questions about, please ask some questions, drop some comments in the thing below here. Email us. but there is so much more to this that is intricate and really unique to each individual human experience that either Chuck or I or Lisa or any member of the team can definitely help with that, walk through that, or we can bring another show.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. So, and remember, guys, you can do that anywhere you see the logo. I think it's just the easier way to say it now, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you are, you can ask those questions or direct message or whatever you want to do. And of course, the email is ashesawesompodcast@gmail.com. So, why don't we move on to the mailbag and go from there? We've got some great questions today, as we always seem to have great questions. They seem to get better and better all the time. So, not that the first ones weren't great. I shouldn't say they seem to get more varied and detailed all the time. I don't know. I was looking for something to save that from. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Put the shovel down.
It's story of my life, man. Story of my life.
Yeah.
All right. So the first question comes from Amy in Nashville. And Amy asks, what strategies do you recommend for coping with cravings and triggers during the recovery journey? We've talked about this before. It's not that we can't, it's something that we can't talk about enough, right? For instance, some of my own cravings, things that came up last week, right? So that we talked about. So, I mean, if I'm still asking the questions, certainly some of our listeners are. So,
yeah. Okay. And so, I think, the first thing we need to do is we need to do a shame check. Like, how much of shame is driving this? How much of I'm not enough is driving this? And so, there's a depth to, understanding what's underneath it all. Cravings, triggers are a flag or an indicator of a turbulence below.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So the whole iceberg thing. It's not actually, there's something happening there. I think the first thing to do is normalize the fact that, everybody that has experienced characteristics of addiction that's going through any form of recovery or rehabilitation is going to experience this. It's going to happen. We lived our lives this way for a long time. If I lived on a beach my whole life and put, that coconut oil on my skin, every time I smell coconut oil, I'm going to be on that beach, and so that's going to happen. So
that's a visual I didn't need. Oh, thank you.
Especially these days. So my advice is to give yourself a break. It's okay. Here's what I'll say, and I said it in the end of last one. When you have a plan, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. When we're like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to get away with it. That's when we're in trouble, and that means that there has been we have lost alignment. We have lost our ability to access rhythm within our life world, and the gap that is created in between the set point and where we are in our trajectory, that is where that pain fills, and we need to cope. And it feels like if we use, it'll get us back to this place, but it actually takes us way off.
Way off, indeed. Right?
Yeah. So I recognize your triggers, Bic lighters, tinfoil, and then we have a conversation. I would recommend accessing vulnerability through your support network, making authentic connection, and expressing with transparency it's exactly what you're experiencing.
I was just about to say, right there, for me, say it out loud. I can't even begin to express how important that is and how powerful that is as far as addressing it and getting past it, I guess, right? If you want
and that's by no accident. It's when we verbalize that it loses its power. It's when it gets in the tumbler of our own consciousness and starts to turn into all these different things. In our heart, there's purity. When we feel, it's pure. Fear cannot hide in my heart. I know it's there. Fear can turn into so many things in my head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when I say it out loud, so if I say it to you, Chuck, I'm like, that makes no sense, or that sounds ridiculous, or and so it goes back to the power of the pen. So even if you can't talk to somebody, journal it.
Yeah.
Write it out. You know what I mean? And and I'm not saying go through the world with a little checklist of all your triggers and be writing them down. Just understand the emotion that is attached to whatever that object is, whatever that trigger point is, whatever that energy is, that person, that phrase, and understand that is not part of who I am or who I want to be. It is a part of a process. And I'll say it again and again and again. As long as we're breathing, we're in process, which means we're constantly changing and there's constantly moving parts. So, cravings are going to happen. I don't know what you guys know about post-acute withdrawal syndrome, but it's 18 months before your brain is fully repaired of abstinence before we have, and our brain will be better than it ever has been. Now, the male brain takes 26 years to develop to completeness.
Yeah.
Legal alcohol is 19 here.
Yeah. So.
Right. So most of us have never actually experienced the capacity and potential of our fully healthy brain. 24 years old for women. Women develop their brain faster.
Right, we all knew that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, they're pretty much smarter.
So I just want to take a quick minute and let you know about a new sponsor of ours, Rosecrest Recovery Services. You might remember Rich Johnson from an episode just recently about interventions, and he was the interventionist, of course, right? So he's come on as a sponsor, and they don't just do interventions. They do family case management, treatment placement. Treatment placement is a free courtesy service, and reaching out is a free and completely confidential. So give them a shout, guys. You can reach them at 615-484-8792 or email at info@rosecrestrecoveryservices.com. Remember, they lead men and women to a life of recovery. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Makes sense. Yeah. And so in that 18 months, that 18 months is the if I'm downtown East Side using for 20 years, that's going to be an 18-month process. It's not the same for everybody, but I will say between months 5 and 8 or 4 and 7, I can't remember, are the most difficult times because that's when the limbic system is doing its reparations. And so that's the emotion center and the memory center. Memory triggers emotion. I mean, I don't think it's a good design that they put the memory and emotion in the same place in our brain. It's not working well for us addicts.
No, no. So, yeah, that's true story. Yeah.
And so understand this is why and I caution going into step 4 and step 5 in that 4 to 7 month period because it's a very vulnerable time and a very vulnerable state. But know that, the one thing that we can always count on that we know is a constant is that emotions always shift and change. They're always in motion. So whatever you're feeling, whatever you think you're stuck in, give it 10 minutes, breathe, do a grounding exercise, remind yourself of, a gratitude list, whatever it takes. But that emotion will change. It's not a state of being like peace is, or like loneliness is also a state of being. The trigger is, or craving is a part of the emotion center, and it's part of a triggered response through the limbic system, which means it guarantee it will change. So, it's like, what I want to use, I'm going to give it 2 hours and check in and see if I still want to use.
Yeah, right. That's a great technique there too.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Sure.
And in that time, I'm gonna call my buddy. I'm gonna call my, if you're in the program, you're gonna call my sponsor, or if you're part of a church, call some member of your church. You're part of your sports team, call somebody that's earned the right to hear.
Part of your network, right? Yeah.
Right, but build that network with. I say hold a high standard in the people you surround yourself with in that network. Because I'm not confident that everybody gives good feedback.
No.
So for me, you got to earn the right for me to listen to you.
Fair enough, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if that answers that, but
I think so. I mean, yeah.
So many versions of that same question, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's going to be asked again, and I'm okay with that. And actually, I'm going to make an executive decision on this one now. Or what you might not even like this, because I'm going to say that's the end of the mailbag, but for a reason. My friend. So we've entered, and because you talked about journaling, it kind of sparked something that I want to talk about on the show anyway. So we're gonna go real quick into that.
Oh, hey, can I just say that?
What?
I just want to let you know that when I lean back, it's because my back hurts, not because I'm disinterested.
I got you.
I know.
Okay. Okay.
I thought it was important to say
that. So we've introduced something to the website. I've got just one fellow so far. There's a bunch more stuff coming, guys. And it's called Shattered Stigma, Amplifying Voices in Addiction and Recovery. And what it is some of the people that are attached to the show are going to be submitting blogs. And hopefully on a weekly basis. I'm not going to hold anybody to anything. I'm going to see how things go. And under promise, over deliver is kind of the idea there. But the first person that I think whose blog post we're going to see is Tammy, who you might recognize from episodes 92 and 92.5, I believe it was. Yeah, 92 and 92.5. She did a two-part series. You remember, Ryan, you actually spoke to Tammy out in Ontario somewhere about her daughter,
Yep.
Brittany.
Yep.
Yeah, right. So Tammy's actually one of the people that's agreed to contribute in a blog post every week. She
cool.
sent me kind of her first thoughts this morning. It's powerful. It's amazing. And so the idea is to have people from, we'll have an interventionist in there if all goes well. We'll have a trauma therapist. We'll have two different moms that are living it right now with adult children inside active use right now. A memorial mom. Be all sorts of different angles and stuff coming at it. And to be on the blog or on the website there to check out and give feedback to, and even do some two-way communication with them if all works out well. But for me personally, where it came from, and I won't say who, one of the people that I've approached about doing this blog and I were talking, and she's having a really hard time in life. And I thought back to when I was doing my blog and how unbelievably cathartic it was for me. I thought, hey, why don't I do this? And then that just, me, like everything else, I've got to, can't just do something simple. You got to blow it up and make it like really complicated and time consuming and stressful, right? Otherwise, right? So
the Chuck
that's
way.
what I did. Yeah, right. Yeah, I went from like 4 a.m. from this idea till by noon, I had the whole damn planet involved. I'm not even kidding. It was crazy, right?
I know you're not. That's why I'm laughing.
So,
funny because it's true.
It's on the website there. Shattered Stigma, and we talk about these things, and the stigma goes away, right? And that's what the stigma is the worst part about all of it, right? That's what keeps us in. It keeps us in addiction. It messes us up so many different ways.
I'd like somebody to tell me the difference between stigma and shame, because
I don't see the difference. Right?
I think that stigma falls under the umbrella of shame.
Well, without 100%.
Yeah.
I don't think a person could really argue that, right? So,
Remember, I just wanted to say, like, shame needs darkness, it needs secrets, it needs isolation to exist.
Yeah.
Stigma is no different. Stigma is a maladaptive consequence of the social tapestry, especially with capitalism. Anyway, I'll stop with that. I do want to. You're right. I'm not happy with ending the mailbag. You're right. I know that there's more questions and I want them.
I'm going to save them for next week. Yeah,
but it's not my show.
I do have a crazy busy afternoon, as you well know, today too. So that's part of the reason too. Is that there's only so much time to give it today. I'd like to do 1.5 hour episodes every time, but it just doesn't work out that way. So I'm so looking forward to doing these interviews this afternoon, and who knows, by the time this airs, what the listeners will have seen or watchers now. I don't know. What do we call them? Fans, listeners, watchers. Right? I don't know. Attendees.
I think listeners or watcher. Yeah. Supporters.
Supporters. There you go. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Supporters of the network.
Yeah, now we're a network, right?
Well,
and we are a network. We are a network. I like, literally, we are, and I like the way you said that. We had that talk last night, right? But
yeah,
it's definitely turning into something, right?
Well, it's not. It's a series of shows, which makes it a network.
Yeah, I guess it does, right? And spanning the globe, like it's a network of people that now is, we're all over the damn map, right? We're all over North America and into Thailand now. We've covered some in England. Remember that episode with Mike Powers?
Yeah.
We're getting around. We're getting around. So
we are. You're getting questions from cities I've never heard of, which is cool.
Yeah. All the S's just makes my lisp come out, right? So.
Mississippi.
No. That place with the river.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Yeah. All right. So with that said, that brings us to my favorite part of the show. That's the Daily Gratitudes.
Today's Daily Gratitudes are brought to you by Revolution Recovery, helping men recover and become their best selves through support and treatment. They've been there and they understand.
What you got for us today, Brian?
First and foremost, as always, my beautiful wife and family, and that driving force that they give me every day. And I'm.
Did she tell you about the comment on her Facebook post? No?
Oh wait, yeah. Oh no, I think okay.
So how come people talk about their kids in months?
Yeah, right? Yeah. I think there's like 18,000.
Yeah, I was like, well, I'm 96,000 hours old, so bet you the months doesn't sound so bad now, does it? Right?
Yeah, right. I saw that.
And I followed that up with your man's always going on about perception is real, so. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, a lot of people listen to me in this world, so she's one of them that doesn't.
Sorry to interrupt your gratitude, sir, man. Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? I'm actually really grateful that I got a partner that can call me on my shit and be honest with me and not. Yeah, but no, my beautiful family is just everything to me. I love them so much, and they this whole thing for me is about adjusting, shifting, changing, influencing, impacting the world that my daughter's going to grow up in. My daughters are going to grow up in. I am super grateful for the experience I have with all walks of life, and to be able to see the ignorance and stigma and how that comes about, the ontological perspective of that. I am grateful that I can recognize at times my own privilege and hope to be a better ally. And I'm grateful for our network. I'm grateful, like, having somebody come up on the street the other day and say, "Hey, you're Ryan Bathgate from Kaleidoscope." Like, that is the coolest thing, man. Like, so I'm grateful that what we're doing is helping people.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Yep. And like, that's just, I can't think of a greater gift, and I'm so happy to be a small part of that.
Likewise. Yeah. Sure. So, and the final gratitude goes out to you guys, the listeners. I'm not going to list all the things. If you see the logo, drop a like, comment, share, whatever you got to do. Anytime you do these things, you're getting me a little bit closer to living my best life. My best life is to make a humble living, spreading the message. The message is this: if you are in active addiction right now, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you start that lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, call into detox, go to a meeting, do whatever the hell it is you need to do to get that journey started, because it is so much better than the alternative. And purple ribbons. And if you are the loved one of somebody who's suffering an addiction right now, just taking the time to listen to our show, maybe take one more minute out of your day and text that person, let them know they're loved. Use the words,
"You are loved."
That little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings them back.
Body's getting cold, my life is running low. Feel me falling, my life is running out. I pray I make it now, but if I don't, it will be okay. I'll find you another day, and I'm not scared to go. It will be okay. I'll find you another way, and I'm not scared to go, because when I die, I'll be happier in another life. Be a ladybug soaring through the sky.